This is the Leo Clamaco podcast.
Are different from those that start when you're in high school or college.
I agree.
There's a kind of bond and relationship there, a tightness
Yeah.
that doesn't go away.
'Cause
That
we evolved
seals
together,
the deal.
right? We grew together. We
Yeah.
learned things together.
Yeah. And now you have families that you're going to be introducing to one another, wives that are going to know one another, the kids are going to hopefully go and play together.
For sure.
You go on vacations and do things together. That's special, you see. So that type of, it's an affirmation for me of how exceptional the group was. It was a two-way street. You guys never knew that you really had an immense impact on what I did, because I saw the fruits of the labor that you guys were putting in, and it was growing right in front of me. It was something that you could see. If you're talking about study, sometimes you see it in a grade.
Right.
And hopefully it is the kid's grade. He didn't, cut corners. He didn't,
Right.
have a paper under his desk. It's a real thing. This is something you saw visually take place right in front of you. And that's really an amazing accomplishment from both sides,
Yes.
From my side, witnessing it, and from the other side, that growth taking place and seeing the transformation physically, mentally.
I think it was also a little bit more than that, Kancho, because I know you saw it, but you gave us freedom. I was 12 years old and you employed me.
Yeah.
You gave me my first job. You gave us opportunity to learn, grow, and fail within your business, within your organization. I think that gave us so much confidence. That gave us so much knowledge that, we matter. That I don't think you have an idea of how much that impacted us.
Well, I'll tell you, you guys were, I trusted you guys implicitly. In other words,
Yeah.
it was a lot of, it was cash business. I'd
Yeah.
leave, I'd come back. There was never any question, You had resilience, you had integrity. And if you have that, that's really, integrity is the most important thing. And if you have that, then, you're
Yes.
well beyond what you should be, where you should be, This is the ultimate.
Going back to Kyokushin, paint me that timeline, draw me that timeline from your first class to you training with Masoyama to you opening up your first dojo.
Okay, so I'm going to try to condense maybe 40 years,
Let's connect those dots.
Well, I told you how I started.
Yes.
And from that day on, there was really no going back, because I had a score to settle. Okay? And I had to, and I was not going to go anywhere until I was taken care of. Okay? But I'll tell you, beyond that, after the first 6 months, I recall taking my first promotion, and after that, I had a situation that required that I do, where I used my art. And after that took place, I came away.
I love how you phrase that.
I came away thinking, I don't feel any better. That didn't make me feel better.
Right.
Yeah, I took care of it. It didn't make me feel better. And I realized that in class, after every class, my instructor would give a speech. And it was philosophical. It had moral tones to it. It was a storytelling. There was something there that he would tell. But there was always a lesson to draw from it. And sometimes mid-class, he'd also give a little talk. But the major talk was always at the end. So all these philosophical conversations were always there. And they were about dedication. They were about discipline. They were about being on time, punctuality. They were about manners, etiquette. It covered everything. And so you would think that in an art where it was kicking and punching, all that you wouldn't have that, but that was
Right.
an integral part
Yes.
of all the classes and of Kyokushin, which I didn't know. And that's what made the difference. The philosophical aspect of it made the difference. And so I remember we would be sitting in a position listening, and a lot of the students sometimes would come out, they would be complaining, kept us all this time, and sometimes we'd sit for an hour. And
I remember those
He doesn't
days.
keep quiet. He doesn't, blah, blah, blah. And for me, I was saying, my God, don't they get it? This is where, there was so much information given. There was so much teaching done. This is the real stuff. And that really is what made the difference. So we go to 4 years down the line when I'm taking my black belt promotion. That first kid that I told you about, young man that I told you about, me and a third guy, we were taking our promotion the first together. So you can imagine how many more years each of them had, especially that first guy I
Right.
told you about. So as the senior person, he went up for promotion first. So we did everything, but he was the first one now who went for fighting. And after the third fight, he gave up.
Really?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Wow.
I was shocked. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
The second guy was my senior, not only in age, but also in years of studying by at least 3.5 to 4 years, more years than me. And my God, by the eighth fight, you had to kind of force him to stand up. He almost couldn't continue. And I remember on my fight, I didn't know because I wasn't counting, I didn't,
Right.
my mind was not on counting. It was at some point on surviving. And I remember at one point, and it was the only time that I actually got hit and went down with that technique. But it was a young man who was known for his kicks and #1 champion and all that kind of stuff again and again and again. And he connected with a beautiful, beautiful roundhouse kick, and I fell down. He didn't knock me out, but I went on the floor, and he dizzied me a bit. And one of the instructors came to me. There were 3 main instructors. Seiji Kanamura, who was my instructor, Tadashi Nakamura, who was the first one who brought Kyokushin to the United States, and Shigeru Oyama, a pioneer leader in Kyokushin. Tadashi Nakamura came to me and said, you give up? You give up, huh? And I turned to him, I said, Brooklyn Dojo never gives up. And I stood up and I continued. And so that was the mindset, that you don't give up. And I was the only one that they actually put the belt around me, and the 3 of them surrounded me.
Wow.
They didn't want to, my instructor didn't want to give the belt to the other guy, the second guy.
Mm-hmm.
But the other 2 instructors kind of forced him to give it to them. So that was, for me, another affirmation that hard work pays off.
Yeah.
I was training 5-6 days a week.
Wow.
7th day was Sunday. I was running and doing my own little work individually, independently, what I thought worked for me. So that, now, after that, I started being in class, constantly being in class. And so I started teaching in the class. And at some point, I told my instructor, look, we're such a great school. We should have more than that. I think there's no reason why we can't register 50 students, and have them for the year. I mean, too many students are leaving. We got to recruit. And he said, you can't do that. And so he gave me that challenge. Well, the first month, I had 80 students in my class.
Wow.
And they wanted to take class with me. His students wanted to now take class with me.
Wow.
So that created kind of a problem.
Yeah.
So I said, look, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I said, well, it's too much of a problem. I'm doing this to help. It's not for me. Everything is going to him. I mean, I'm doing it for free, and I'm happy doing it. I'm taking my Saturday afternoons to come and teach so.
Right.
So I left. And so I decided, you know what? There's a place down the block that I know, about 40 blocks. And I told him, listen, I found a place. He said, no, you can't do that. Brooklyn is, too close to me. And all right, fine. So now I started going through the yellow pages at the time. You probably don't know that, but you're too young for that. But it's the paper version of the internet now, but very limited version. And I started calling places. Did they have a room for rent? And I found this gym that had rental space.
In Queens?
In Queens. So I went immediately. That was Total Fitness. So I said, that's where we're going to go. I rented it, and I called my instructor. I told him I found a place. And he says, no, you can't do that. I have to approve of it and all that. I said, listen, I already signed. There's no going back. I'm starting. And he spent about 2 hours on the phone with me. So I made a phone call that I thought he would be happy because I'm representing him. And
right.
I mean,
But all he saw was competition.
I was working. I didn't need, outside of that, all of that was really for him.
Right.
I saw it as an extension of the main dojo, and we had spoken about that. And when that happened, after that phone call, I said, you know what, there's no way. I mean, with that kind of mindset,
He felt threatened by you.
I'm not going to succeed,
Yeah.
And so I started on my own, and I decided at the time, you know what, that's it. I'm going to make it succeed. And of course, everybody was, I didn't find much support. So I knew it had to be, and I wasn't counting on it. I knew what I had to offer. I believed in what I was doing. And that's how I started. And I started